Welcome to my Satisfactory playthrough. My name's Log, and I'm here to share some of the stuff I've built in Satisfactory and over time other games that I play as well. So, in this series I will take you on a quick run through of all the factory areas I've built at each stage of the game and show you the architecture I've done, how I adapted my play to lay things out like that. So, this will be a pre-built factory. I might start a new run through when the new version of the game comes out soon, because that will add blueprints and other fun things, which may be the last release they do before the full release. That's going to be a bit of fun, but this is based on a tour of my existing factory. Lock vehicles, always a good thing. So, this is Satisfactory. This is what it looks like after you've sunk a few hundred hours into the game. Built a lot of rubbish. But we'll start at the beginning. After you've run around naked for a while, and not naked, in your uniform, I haven't got anything, you build this, which is your hub. The hub is sort of the center point, as the name suggests, of your game. It's got everything you'll need as a pioneer. You have a toilet, poster. Depending on how long you've been playing your game, you may have random copies of yourself or others that turn up inside it. This little kitchen area, got a cupboard, or possibly that's where the shower is, because there doesn't seem to be a shower in here. Need a shower. Got some cables, got some beds that you don't ever use, and you've got a little desk area. Desk area's got some overlay monitors, so you can see what's going on in the world. Sort of diagnostic prompt. Nice desktop background, or possibly views of the world outside. Pioneer instant message list. Some sort of problem. Little box. New update's been released. I've got to be upstairs again. Yes, constantly updating it. Or you can play Productivity Packer, which I'll do in a different stream. It's a little mini game they put inside it. You fit blocks together. It's a bit like Tetris, but not. And yeah, so let's have a quick look around my start base area, which is what we're sat in now. It's begun raining. Perfect. So, at the beginning, you unlock a few basic things. Eventually you don't have to manually mine anymore, and you can build miners and smelters and constructors. And the miners mine ore, the smelters smelt the ore into ingots of various types, and then you use constructors to turn that into resources. Very early on in the game you don't have any foundations, you don't have any walls, you don't have most of these types of buildings, you don't even have belts to begin with till you get further in. Just have the basics, but as things grow you can put down power and level up. This is how my base looked after I started out. This is all the machines I built at the beginning to get myself rolling. Just laid them directly on the floor, tried to make it sort of neat. Eventually I unlocked storage containers, and we can see I put down a bunch of storage containers, and the reason for that is they're nicely located next to my hub. And that means that instead of going to each machine and working out or remembering which machine had all my stuff in, I've now got a storage container with the basic resources in it. So I've got over here iron plates, wires, iron rods, cement, concrete. Up there, copper sheets, screws, and cables. I put little short bits of belt outside, either built off of these stackable conveyor poles, or on individual little low-level conveyor poles, and just built the ground. And that's so that I get a short bit of belt coming out, and then I can see easily what is built. After you've built a few basic machines around the back of your hub, you can place two of these biomass burners. These grind up fuel of some kind, biofuel or otherwise, and they produce 20 megawatts of power each. And you have to spend a lot of the very early game running back and forth to feed them with fuel if you're going to keep them going, because the stacks don't last that long in them. And then you run cables everywhere, you hook everything to a power network, and eventually you end up with a giant power network like this. But I'll go into that more later. And you get these external biomass burners. So I put down three independent biomass burners, and a bunch of little factory places, few constructors and things to get things going, and feed everything round. And at the end of the 0 tier of technology, you get foundations and can start building other things. So that's a very quick run through of everything I did in my starter base for tier 0. So I didn't show you the equipment workshop, but that's just outside. We covered smelters and cables. We looked at where I put my constructors. I've talked about using the conveyors to connect things together and laid down a couple of poles. The Mark 1 miner, I've actually got Mark 2 miners outside, but it's the same thing. The storage containers I've shown you. And we've talked about the biomass burners and the biomass. I'll reflect on the biomass because I put something like that, and the space elevator. So biomass is you can handcraft lots of things in this game. Handcrafting takes place initially in your crafting bench that is part of your hub. You go through there and find a whole bunch of things, including biomass recipes to turn leaves or wood or mycelia into biomass. You can also turn alien parts into biomass or burn those directly, and eventually you can learn to make solid biofuel, which is even better. All this stuff lets you extract a bit more energy from it and burns a little less rapidly. The equipment shed is here. Equipment workshop, you build that as a single thing, and that allows you to build various bits of equipment. Early on, the main one being this portable miner and beacons when you use those, although beacons are going away. And for those you have to deal with the local wildlife, you get to build the basic Xeno Zapper, which is a little short-range weapon, and the Xeno Basher, which is like the same thing again, but now on a big stick, so that you can wave it around. And if I remember which key binding it is, I can show you my Xeno Basher. So you deal with the locals. This is the iron mine. That's the manual miner that would mine for me if I wanted to. I'll just throw that away so you could see it running. And so instead of me having to manually mine, this will auto mine. If I manually mine, I hold E. Not very quick. If I tap E, if I press tab whilst holding E, it'll glitch the game a little bit and it keeps it mining while I'm looking at this menu. And if I push tab, I can even leave it and it will continue to mine even though I'm not pressing E right now. It just got stuck. But if I look away, it stops. The point of auto mine is that while you're not there, he's busy mining for you, so you don't have to do the mining. It's good when you need a little boost in stuff and early on before you can build proper miners. Proper miners being these fixed ones that sit here on the resource, churn it all out. They can be linked with belts, they can be tied into machines. So I talked about manually churning bio stuff, but you can also automate the biofuel stuff in the end. So I've got a bin full of wood and a bin full of leaves, and then I have this constructor that I switch between using wood or leaves and redo the belt work or move the stuff between the bins, and that takes wood and turns it into biomass. It goes along this conveyor belt into the next machine, which takes biomass and turns it into solid biofuel. Solid biofuel I don't think is a recipe at the start, but it's all there. I'm further through the game, so I've got it. And then I have this bin which fills up with biofuel. So if I need to run these generators, which are mostly idle now because I have other fuel sources, which I'll cover in later videos, I can refill them using those biofuel machines. You see they're not quite totally full, so I have at some point in the not too distant past needed to use my biofuel generators just to top up what I'm producing. The last thing we saw on that list was the space elevator, and that is this gorgeous thing here. It's a very, very, very tall structure. So tall, in fact, it technically goes all the way off into space, somewhere way up there. And what the point of this is a bit like this hub, actually this front bit of the hub here. This is a little spaceship, which you fill up with a small amount of stuff, and this front section here lifts off, that's the two engines, and it will zip up into the sky to deliver upgrade materials when you control it through this. So in this case I've got a milestone of late game milestone of putting in these resources. I'd load all them up, hit the button and send it off. But when you need to send larger amounts of stuff off to move between these tiers, just use the space elevator. So by the space elevator being at the end of tier 1, it allows you to unlock it, build it, and then go to the space elevator to unlock tier 1. So I set tier 1. Start with tier 0, so unlock tier 1. So that covers everything in my basic base. I will go through in the next video what I built when I got into tier 1, which allowed me these more complicated recipes. The main one being that I could now have foundations and walls and actually start to build factories on floors rather than just spamming it all over the place. And so that in front of us is the first factory I built. This is one of the second factory areas I built, and we'll show you how over time I improved, I'd say, my layout. Tried to make things neat rather than this one, which I kept deliberately because I wanted my original factory, and I just put this together quickly but without too much clipping or anything. After this I decided I'd try and do a better job, and so these factories are nicely laid out, the belts are neat, and I'll go over those in a second. And soon you'll notice these Christmas tree looking like things and the massive Christmas tree looking like thing on top. This is actually a Fixmas factory, and it's the first factory where I tried to make everything look a bit more pretty and style things and use windows rather than big blocks of wall and all this kind of stuff. So I will go through that soon, and it's December is about to start, and that's when the Fixmas event begins. It's called Fixmas because the main company in this is your employer or owner or operator, depending on how the story goes, all associated with this company called Fixit. That's on all this branding. And Fixit run a motivational event every December called Fixmas, which allows you to do fun stuff to be motivated for the rest of the year. So various things in the game have a Fixmas setting, like these Fixmas gifts that you get out of the trees and the Fixmas baubles you make, and so on, to build other decorative events. But that'll be in another video. For now we've covered the main things. We've touched on the space elevator. I'm fairly late game, so I need quite advanced parts to launch that next, but I'll show you it when I launch it in the future. And we'll also go over what things like the Awesome Sink and Awesome Shop are. So that's it for now. If you've liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, give it a like. If you want to see how my factory evolved over time and go through that with me, please subscribe to the channel or hit the bell icon possibly so that you get to see more. And there, you'll get to see how I got through trains, how I used my trucks, how I dealt with oil, and some of the more cosmetically pleasing factories I've got, because believe me, these look a bit like crap compared to some of the stuff I did later, or I think. Because these were built early on in the game when there was no zooping, so I had to place every single panel manually on all these factories and all the stuff around here and all of that Christmas factory and all of that factory. In fact, everything here I think was before they added zooping, so I'll explain what that is when I get to those factories. So I hope you found that enjoyable and it's whetted your appetite for something more, and me and Snowy will see you in a future video hopefully. Thanks for watching.